Hello, everyone, and welcome to Clean Water Conversations, the podcast where we have casual discussions about creating clean and clear waterways right here in Lancaster County. I'm Ken.
Hey, everybody, I'm Allison.
Allison, we are right in the middle, right in the throes of the holiday season.
Holly jolly goodness.
Yay, there's so much going on. Oh, my gosh. What are your favorite parts of the holiday season?
I like the joy that it brings and the festivities and the energy that comes along with celebrations and traditions.
Yeah.
How about you? What are the favorite parts?
Two things. One, all the food that I should not eat that I do anyway.
Yes.
And the second one, and this would be a surprise for a lot of people, is I enjoy watching Hallmark holiday movies with my wife.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she's going to hold me to it now, so I'm going to be watching a lot of them.
That's
but
right.
I really do enjoy that. Yeah.
I found a good one last weekend, so we'll swap stories.
There you go. We'll talk off mic. So that's all. Any parts of the holiday that you avoid?
I definitely avoid last minute shopping.
Mhm.
Not a fan of the panic moments as we get closer and closer.
Yeah, I hear that.
You?
About the same. Yeah, and I try to avoid stress as much as anxiety and stuff as much as humanly possible.
Isn't that like built into the holiday season?
It kind of is. So so it's not an easy target to hit, let me tell you.
Focus on those joys or the awesome things that are happening.
Nice segue. What's on your list of awesomeness this week?
Part of my list of awesomeness is this invitation that we got from Senator Sarah Elfreth in Maryland. So she's a Maryland legislator, but she invited us to share our stream delisting strategy on a showcase that she's hosting for a piece of legislation called the Whole Watershed Act. It is Maryland legislation with Maryland money attached to it. And she invited a Pennsylvania group to be part of her showcase to talk about what's working here and what people in Maryland could do with this. So it's just such an amazing piece of the narrative building, the local progress here, how that is spreading. And that's part of the momentum building. So really grateful for that chance to talk about the partner organization's success to a really unique audience.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Very appropriate.
And your list of awesomeness includes?
Oh, I'll tell you, this week, the Department of Environmental Protection awarded the Countywide Action Plan, or CAP. We're going to be using that acronym a lot.
That'll come up a lot.
So this one's that's covered.
Good.
So this week, I'm going to go back and actually use it now. The Department of Environmental Protection, or DEP, awarded the CAP implementation grants for 2025, and Lancaster County was awarded $5.9 million.
Celebrations! Yeah!
Good stuff. And that's just going to keep moving all these projects forward that are moving us towards clean and clear water.
Absolutely. There's demand for this work, and the resources are flowing along with it. So we're really, really grateful for that support from DEP and the Environmental Protection Agency, and the way that the CAP program through a block grant really makes that even easier. So we're going to spend a little bit more time learning about the CAP program and the CAP coordinator who has been helping us do that work for the last number of years.
Yeah, Mike Lasala, as you mentioned, is our CAP coordinator team lead. He brings expertise as a specialist and analyst and municipal separate storm sewer system. We'll get back into that one. System program manager at Land Studies, Inc. He was an incredible conversation, entertaining guy, really, really smart guy.
Yep.
So let's hit it.
I want to know this story.
Wait, you were on Starview?
Starview
I
92.7
love that
Eagle.
station. That was
Whoa.
awesome.
Yeah.
Things I didn't know.
My radio name was Tanner Collins.
I listened to you. Oh my gosh, that's wow.
Well, it was just Tanner to start, but and that's when I was in Florida and did modern rock.
Yeah.
So this is 90s.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back up here to go to school, needed a job. I went to 92.7, and they said because of the format, we have to have full radio names, first and last name.
Yeah.
And so the program director said, "Hey, pick one out. We'll talk it over tomorrow, see what works." I wanted Tanner Van Halen. He said, let's go with Phil Collins, Tanner Collins. So I said, all right, that'll work.
Oh my gosh.
That's fantastic.
So did you study broadcast?
No.
Okay.
No, when I was in Florida, so before I went to school, I traveled a bit, and I was bartending down in Florida. This is right after high school. Just turned 21, and we needed to hire more bartenders, and we had someone we liked, but we wanted them to go to bartending school. And it was an acronym. I can't recall exactly if it was ABC, I think, American Bar, or ABA or something, American Bartending Academy or something along those lines. And I called the wrong one, where it turned out it was like American Broadcasting Academy. And he's telling me, the gentleman on the other line, no, I'm sorry, you called the wrong number. And then he said, well, hold on a second. I like your voice. Did you ever think of getting into radio? And I said, well, sure, and so I did that. It was about a 6-week course. And then before I knew it, I was just sort of doing that is helping pay for school and
Wow. If you're just tuning in, Mike is absolutely blowing our minds right now.
No, I mean, it was fun. I was paid to play music and talk on the radio. Yeah. And it was great. So, except for the one time I left, it was a Saturday afternoon, and I left in 92.7, the old Rose building by Laserdome. And apparently a bank had been robbed in Mount Joy or something while I was on the air. And I left, and apparently I matched the description, and I ended up pulled over. There was the police officer, the hand on the gun. There was about 4 cop cars surrounding my car. He was asking me all sorts of questions. I don't remember. I just thought it was a little weird. And then he explained, yeah, your car and you match the description of a bank robbery, I believe it was.
Wow. Chalk that up under your bucket list of crap you don't want to experience.
Right. Yeah, right. I mean, they didn't get physical or anything. It was just odd.
Mike, you are full of stories.
Yeah. There's probably something one place or another. I've done something stupid. So.
Keep them coming, man. Keep them coming.
That just sounds fun. Well, not the bank robbing part.
Right.
You're going to get yourself in trouble. You know that.
Maybe.
Saying stuff like that. Well, let's start off with an icebreaker.
Wow.
And your icebreaker question is this. If you could give advice to your 8-year-old self and your 18-year-old self, what would it be?
Oh, geez. It's quite a few, but I think, right away with the 8-year-old, I would say something along the lines of, when some of the kids call you weird, just smile and say thank you. Move on.
Yeah.
I used to fight that one, they'd say you're weird. And an 18-year-old, something I learned later in life, I think I wish I would have learned earlier, was embrace the mistakes. Make mistakes, embrace them.
Yeah.
Embrace them. I've learned so much more from making mistakes than trying to be perfect. So
it's hard in the moment, but
yes. Yeah.
yes, when you collect them all.
Now it's, I never understood that. I'd hear someone would say, I think it was a conversation with my mom. She's like, well, if you make these mistakes, they'll fire you. And I started thinking about that just from a business sense. I'm like, I want people to make mistakes. We don't want to fire them. They're probably going to learn from their mistakes.
Right.
So, mistakes are learning experiences.
That's great. That's great advice right there. So did you grow up in Lancaster County?
Sort of. We moved here when I was 13. Originally from the Pittsburgh area. Moved here when I was about 13. Lampeter, Strasburg, class of 92. And so sort of. It was still when West Lampeter, I think there was about 115, 120 of us in my class, and wasn't developed. You could drive through about a dozen different farm fields that are all now developments. But so sort of from here.
It's crazy how much the landscape around us changes so fast here.
Yeah.
I remember driving, this is like 1990. I remember driving from Willow Street to Neffsville, and timed it just right. I mean, you could do it in about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Now I'm in Lidditz. I don't want to drive below Neffsville.
Right.
It's like, that's the outer limit now.
People who aren't from the area right now are like, I am totally confused on what he's talking about.
Sorry.
Look up the traffic patterns on the pikes.
Right.
But Mike's our fellow Steelers fan.
Yes.
Yay.
Uh-huh.
In the blood.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
And I think I'm about one of the last 10 Pirates fans still. So I still follow the Pirates.
Stick with them. You got a theme. I like it. I like it a lot. So what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, there was probably a couple things, but I think everything always migrated back to, I've always been fascinated with movies. Love movies.
Yeah.
And not so much acting, but the writing, the directing, the producing, the camera, the cinematography, all the music. That's
the production side of it.
Yeah. I just always found that fascinating and always found myself getting enthralled and lost in movies and thought, man, it'd be fantastic to make movies.
Yeah.
So
how do you go from an interest in movie production to the conservation world where you are now?
I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I just have always had this insatiable thirst for knowledge.
Yeah.
Learning. I've always been that way. And it led me down this pike of physics and chemistry in college. Just, if I could have had a quadruple or a sextuplet major, I probably would have tried it. One semester, I remember I put all my classes Tuesday and Thursday. There's some advice to my 18-year-old self. Is don't put all your classes on Tuesday and Thursday.
I wondered which way you were going to go with that.
Right. That was a mistake.
Okay.
I embraced it still, but boy, those Tuesday and Thursdays were rough that one semester. But,
oh my gosh.
I just find science fascinating. And initially I thought I would be going a different route. And how I sort of dropped into the conservation world is whether you look at it as right place, right time, or wrong place, wrong time.
Right.
It was when I was in California. It was working, and MS4 this was phase 1. It was brand new. I hope you have replacement batteries. As soon as we start talking about MS4, then it's you can hold a 10-minute conversation in acronyms in that one.
So what does MS4 stand for?
Nobody knows. No, it's municipal.
I do actually, because I got buzzed on it.
Right. Municipal separate storm sewer system.
Excellent, thank you.
Absolutely.
Now you can use it as much as you want.
Yes.
All right. It was brand new. It was it was a phase 1. MPDS was fairly a brand new system. Was a consultant working with.
Already?
What's that?
What is PDS?
Oh, NPDS.
NPDS. Okay.
Nobody knows.
Okay.
National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, boy, get the batteries ready.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back to the acronym thing. Go ahead.
So it was a brand new program, and it was working as a consultant and a contractor, and we did a lot of work with the city of San Diego, and it was essentially, hey, here's this program, figuring it out, it was a lot of trial and error, lessons learned, figuring out the program, what was expectations were from the state, from the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA.
Nice. That one's free now too.
Right on. And so I learned a lot, and it was dealing with a lot with water quality, and sort of that tie between land development, water quality, transportation infrastructure. And that just kind of set me up in the path that I am today. And I never thought I would be down that path, but here I am.
Yeah.
And Mike, your work within that world or with that expertise, there's a lot that happens at Land Studies, but this whole idea of the countywide action plan and the coordinator role for the CAP and the implementation projects that go with it, how did you get there? Like, what was the interest? What was the tie for you between that kind of expertise and this unique opportunity that came around right before COVID?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think it aligned more, not so much in the MS4 realm, but more of, just say, Land Studies mission or our mindset.
Okay.
And we've always had this grounded belief in that we have these 3 considerations when you look at the world around us. And that's, our community, our economic engine, and our ecological surroundings. That's sort of the 3 components that make up where we're at, that make us thrive, help us live, enjoy our surroundings. And we've always attempted to try and and balance those three.
Mhm.
You don't want to sacrifice one for another. And it's very easy to go down that rabbit hole where you look at a situation and say, no, don't worry about the community and the economic side, just the ecological, and vice versa. Let's just look at the economic, who cares?
Right,
But
yeah.
we've always sort of looked at those three components as primary considerations. And MS4 is just an element that falls under that.
Mhm.
And I think at the same time, what the CAP is attempting when we look at the state's program, the WIP, it's really trying to balance, without saying it, those three. So there we go.
This is going to get so distracting.
What's
Whip.
that one?
Whip.
Watershed implementation plan. So,
Gotcha.
for the TMDL.
Go,
Total
go.
maximum daily load.
There we go.
I was going to see how
Just do a
quick we're going to
vocab
get to
list
the,
before we
yes.
start.
But the state's plan,
Mhm.
fortunately, a lot of times in whether we look at regulations, laws, ordinances, code, is the state or the feds essentially saying, this is how you do it exactly. And
Right.
what was
Yeah.
nice about the CAP was they said they heard our voice, I think specifically from Lancaster County, just through the work
Mhm.
between, originating with the consortium and built upon by the partners, was essentially, hey, we've got our own ideas. We know our area. We know what works. And what they provided was a framework that allowed us to do that. And yet simultaneously, back when I talked about those considerations under land studies umbrella,
Mhm.
I look at the CAP, or what the state was trying to achieve, is really letting us figure out how do we balance that economic, that ecological, and that community considerations together, simultaneously moving
Yeah.
ahead.
You're right. It's a big opportunity, and the creativity that we were able to put into it allowed it to be more personal and allowed it to be more locally driven. So the way that Lancaster has approached it, we've got the Lancaster County Conservation District, Clean Water Partners, and then this contractual team. What would you describe as the primary goal of the coordinator with all of those, like the way Lancaster's done it? We've brought all those people to this, but what would you describe the primary goal of the CAP coordinator is?
I think the goal would be the same as just its function. And I believe its chief function might be best described as a translator,
Okay.
the conduit
Okay.
between the state and the local.
Mhm.
And just to give a very, very basic example, when you look at the Bay program, you look at the efforts of the Chesapeake Bay, and you look at, I'll say, definitions of certain types of best management practices, BMPs, which we'll get into. We need to change the term BMP anyway. We'll get
Because it
into
stands
that.
for.
Best management
He
practices.
did say that. He did
Okay,
say that.
thank
Yep.
you.
There's a definition, say, for some practices that might go on a farm, but we call it something different locally. And we have to create that communication link, or that transition, that translation for the information, the requirements, the data to go back and forth to sort of meet that overarching Bay program goal with what we want to achieve locally. So I think that function of the CAP coordinator team is really simultaneously its goal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Well, that in mind, what would you say the group, the CAP coordinator team, has accomplished?
I think a lot with that translation. A big one, a common example is the way the data needs to go from the state to the Bay program to be measured and cast is a major function between that. I saw you
CAST
reach
is
it,
another
so-
acronym. Sorry.
Chesapeake Assessment Scenario Tool.
Thank you.
So it's a modeling
The Bay
program.
model.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bay model. There we go. So technically CAST is part of the Bay model.
Oh, right.
So CAST is our entry point for those best management practices.
Mhm.
And the information that needs to be tied to individual BMPs has to have certain attributes reported
Mhm.
for the model to count it. So we had to make that translation because there was different ways we captured data and information related to BMPs on the ground differently than maybe needs to be reported. So as part of that effort was to try and communicate, develop those we'll call quote unquote standards that everybody could understand is coming down the pike, and everybody can start organizing their inventories in a particular manner to be able to report much more in real time and more complete data to get into the model. Because we knew we had a lot of BMPs in the ground, just weren't reported, weren't being counted.
Right.
Was something we noticed.
Now, is that held against us? If they're seeing far fewer projects or far fewer BMPs that are being installed, do they say, wait a minute, you guys are falling behind? Is that the reaction for that?
Yes and no, maybe sorta is it better. It's not that anybody is sort of holding the feet to the fire of, you guys aren't doing this, specifically say Lancaster County.
Right.
It was inherently understood that we've had a reporting problem for decades. We just did not have the infrastructure in place to correctly report. There's a double-edged sword in there, because now that we're getting the BMPs in, we're reporting better, and that's constantly improving. There's a continuous reporting function that needs to occur now. And some of those are annual, sometimes 5-year cycles, some are 10-year cycles. And say a BMP with a 5-year cycle doesn't get reported, the model doesn't recognize it anymore and kicks it out. So it's important to stay on top of those reporting cycles of the BMPs we've captured. So it's not so much someone saying, oh, you're doing terrible. It's, hey, we're seeing some of the BMPs going down and realizing that's telling us a story locally. Oh, right. we're maybe need to pick up the ball a little bit here on capturing some verifications.
Mike, you play the CAP coordinator role, or serve as the CAP coordinator role, for a couple different counties. Why do you think having a CAP coordinator team helps Lancaster achieve more?
Oh, Lancaster already has the bullseye, so to speak, on us. We are a different animal. That mix of development and farmland is rare. Okay. How much we have mixed here. And because we have, 5,000 plus farms, but we have a population over 500,000. I mean, that's not a common condition you're going to find in a lot of places. So it becomes much more, whether you want to call it challenging, to sort of manage those economic, community, and ecological considerations, because you can have what easily could be competing forces against each other. So a team is much more appropriate just due to the fact the magnitude of all the development and the number of farms we have here.
Yeah.
And I think the team approach in Lancaster has required different types of expertise. And I should say the team has allowed that expertise to be part of it. It's not like we're leaning on one person to do all of it. So I appreciate that about the way that all of the members have come together and the way that you have help facilitate that. So
yeah, not a problem. That's what I'm here for.
That's right.
Now, Lancaster, like you said, Lancaster has the target on it. What kind of messaging does the rest of the Chesapeake Bay watershed need to hear from the CAP coordinator team?
I don't know if they need to hear anything else from us. I mean, the one thing, so I do help other counties, and I'll be honest, a lot of times I'll hear, something along the lines of, does the state understand we're not Lancaster County? And it's due to, there's limited resources. It's different conditions.
Right.
So, I think maybe reworking that, if we had to communicate a message, is, what we've set up in Lancaster County is what works for Lancaster County. Yeah. What you need to do is don't try and mimic us, but find what works for you to implement. And I think that's the message hopefully other counties pick up on.
Anything for the Chesapeake Bay audience, so people beyond Pennsylvania. And we, like Ken, you've worked so hard this year about building that narrative of local success and making sure that it's not the bullseye as the headline. It's more that we're the biggest opportunity to see this restoration.
Right.
And we're seeing it. Like the changes are happening. The water quality is improving. The momentum is growing. So I hear what you're saying, that we don't want to push that in a negative way on other places. That's not the expectation for every county in Pennsylvania, but feel like we need to continue telling the story of progress, that it's not Pennsylvania's behind or Lancaster is the biggest
nutrient loading rate. We don't want that anymore. Like, yeah, we're working on it, but it is about the progress too, I guess.
Yeah, but I think it's also it's maybe it's a safety check or just a quick checkpoint on progress. Is these efforts take years? You know, maybe this is as bad to me to say, but I remember when the Bay TMDL came out in 2010, and they said 2025. I was still young in the industry, but I sort of chuckled to myself, that's not happening. I mean, it's easy to damage something, but you've got to take twice as long to fix any damage you've done.
Yeah.
And I think that's important with just Bay wide is we're not going to have everything fixed by this exact date.
Right.
You know, that's more of a personal opinion where we have a lot of knowledge, and I'm part of a group, the Water Quality Goal Implementation Team under the Bay program,
Mm-hmm.
Water Quality GIT. And when I usually I'm just sitting there listening because there's so much knowledge, so much capability with that group, a lot of great insight and work, but simultaneously, you know, I'm always trying to look at the pros and cons of everything. And I feel sometimes we trap ourselves, and we're guilty of this at land studies as well. And I think even within the CAP world of saying, oh, we can control the environment. You know, we kind of get that we can do this by 2025 and everything's fixed. And I think that's arrogant to believe that we have that much capability over Mother Nature.
Yeah.
So it's just knowing that it takes time. It's very counterintuitive to say, don't place a target end date. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
I like how the wording right now is beyond 2025, that it seems like that's really being embraced, that we're going to keep working on this and maybe, or maybe not, set a deadline. I guess time will tell on that one. I mean, we have our message of clean and clear by 2040.
Sure.
But I think that is a far more reasonable, far more likely deadline that we can get all this work done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think to look at it too is the beyond 2025, I think is good as even when you're considering the 2040 as the local goal is interim milestone, interim step.
Yeah.
That it's an ongoing process. I think what's happened past 6 to 10 years when you look at not just Lancaster County, but Bay wide is the progress. Like you mentioned, Allison, where we've sort of shifted from third to fourth gear. You know, there might be a fifth gear, but it's sort of we're cruising now, and we don't want to downshift. You know, we want to find that cruising speed and understand that those future dates are it's a checkpoint of we're in fourth gear.
Yeah.
You know, that's okay. Now let's look at let's outline what we're going to do to 2070 or something along those lines.
I love that analogy, that gear analogy. That's good.
Well, and the CAP is a tool for us with Bay-related numbers. Like you said, the deadlines are set for Bay goals. In Lancaster, we have this CAP as a tool for that, but it's also just one part of it. Going for clean and clear by 2040, the CAP is something that not everybody is paying attention to. Or I know that we talk to partner organizations that are like, why does 2025 matter? In their normal world, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So I think it's a tool that helps rally people. It puts numbers on things. It gives some interim deadlines. But it is an important piece of the collaborative approach here that not everybody is paying attention to 2025 for the same reason.
That's a good point.
There's this great image from Stroud, a slide about timelines, like you're saying, of how much we're trying to achieve within this small amount of time. And it acknowledges the hundreds of years of land use changes that we've done and industrial revolutions and the Dust Bowl, all of these things that have happened to change our landscape. And then we're trying to do this little bitty part at the end to restore all of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the Aladdin moment of phenomenal cosmic powers. Living space.
That should be on the cover of the CAP.
The genie.
We'll work on that for the next one. Next update. Which is a great segue because in 2024, we updated the information in the CAP booklet, which you can download, by the way, on our website at LancasterCleanWaterPartners.com. And you provided a lot of those stats, like how close we are to meeting the various goals towards the watershed implementation plan, or WIP, as we already said, their 2025 deadlines. Can you give us like a kind of a high overview of those goals? Like what are the expectations?
So a lot of those numbers, the expectations were sort of simultaneously developed based on state recommendations and conversations at the local level. What we felt was important, what we wanted to focus on, what we felt was achievable. And when we first did that, it was limited data for us to be able to sort of figure out what was realistic versus aspirational maybe. And there was, in all honesty, probably a little bit of dart throwing at a board, coming up with numbers. But, and that was now, what, 7 years ago. And in that time, the number of tools, the amount of data that's been collected has, I hate to sound like a cliche, exponentially increased. For us to start measuring or trying to dial in a more realistic, vision of what is achievable, where are we headed? And so there's multiple practices across the board. And a lot of them we've had to refine. We specifically did that about a year ago where, we thought, as an example, we know the benefits of riparian buffers. So it was, we're going to get thousands upon thousands of acres. And, and as we were able to collect more data, it was, well, we don't have that many acres that exist really. So we need to dial that back some actually. And that's what we've done across the numbers. And I think, I'm the first to say, yes, we like to live in that world where there's this target of 3,000 acres of riparian buffers. And I actually hate those targets. In that way, it's want to look at it more of the progress. Where are we trending and maintaining those types of BMPs? And are they, if we go back to the notion about community, ecological, economic, is I believe what we're seeing more on the ground, and whether the CAP coordinator team and the partners, I think we indirectly and directly support those efforts when we look at the delisting strategy. And those local efforts that are happening is not trying to shoehorn buffers or different types of BMPs into every scenario. To start looking at it is balancing those three considerations of what makes sense for this very specific local spot. To balance those considerations. And I'm seeing that more and more. And that's why I hate those targets, because when you have those targets and you're finding opportunities, you're like, get more of this BMP in the ground. So we raise the number. And it's like, well, that might not make sense for that specific locale.
Yeah.
So that's why I understand the numbers. It's showing progress, but it's that double-edged sword. I hate them at the same time that sometimes we don't focus on what should happen right here.
Yeah.
Well, and the piece about the CAP is that DEP gave each county a number for nitrogen and phosphorus reductions.
Did we say what?
Department of Environmental Protection.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Thank you. Your gracefulness today.
I think I'm up like 8 zip on those.
My button's getting tired over here.
They gave us these numbers that are, yes, the way we were going to accomplish or reach those numbers, we had to be aspirational and somewhat realistic. But now with this chance in 2024 to revise those, it was so extremely helpful to have your expertise to say this number doesn't make sense, or to also kind of help us gauge what our realistic, the reality of the pace needs to be. And to be okay saying, we're not going to meet that. It's more important to have a tool that's useful and realistic than something that it just has these massive numbers that, no, we're not going to get there. Or no, there's not enough acres to actually make that goal.
And that was sort of born out of even how we handle MS4 programs.
Right.
We talk to municipalities. They'll say, well, why should I measure the water quality? Because if I measure it, now I'm going to be beholden to it, or I have to do something. And I would tell them, I said, you're more likely to get in trouble for ignoring it, not addressing the reality versus actually looking at it and understanding what your condition is and just having a long-term plan. And that's what we're trying to do with the CAP, with the numbers, is find out more realistically what actually is out there, what could happen, and adjust it. And it'll constantly trend. It'll constantly adjust for more years.
Well, and that's where I think it comes back around to that team approach, that you couldn't write a plan like that if you only had one person, or if you were only using one perspective. And especially, like you said, with the diverse land uses in Lancaster and the diverse needs that we have and all of the different partner organizations doing this work, it wouldn't be the same tool. So getting the numbers more realistic for the last year and a half is pretty important. And then knowing that whatever CAP 2 is going to be, or I guess it's phase 4 of the WIP at this point, will be beyond 2025.
Right.
We'll see. But
let's see. Yep. And we'll adjust the number. Whether I think it's appropriate that we continue, whether that document's in front of us or not.
Right.
It's created a tool for us to help just understand a thermometer, not an exact temp, but gives us a thermometer of what's been happening and what we're looking at.
But I do remember when DEP invited us to play this role, when they introduced the idea of a CAP coordinator. We, as the Lancaster Clean Water Partners, it was really early in our existence, and the steering committee which served as our initial board, basically. When they came together and heard this invitation, they were like, really? So what's going to be different? Or what are we going to get in return for this? Or what is the reality of the expectation going to be then? If we do this, say yes now, what's a year from now? So I remember going up to Harrisburg, and we sat around with all of the secretaries, and we said, we're like, so what's going to be different? What are you going to give us in return? And at the time, it wasn't like, here, we can give you a check.
Right.
It was, okay, we'll look at permitting differences. We'll look at processes, capacity, the kind of training, the kind of dollars that we can move around. And so I think that's been one of those things over time as well. So the CAP coordinator role was not something that we were all like, yes, sure, sign me up right now.
And those programmatic challenges are still in front of us.
Yeah.
Simultaneously. There's a lot of aspiration, or we understand the weaknesses or the changes that could be helpful, but change is hard.
It is.
And one of the best documents that have come out of the Bay side, at least in my opinion, was the CSER, Comprehensive Evaluation of System Response Report.
You're learning.
I am. You can teach an old dog new tricks. No, man. But it talks about a lot of concepts that I believe we've played with, or have thought about, but it outlined it in a very well laid out manner, how this could look like, and we're still trying to pursue components or elements explained in that report, but it's not a simple sign off. It'll take time, but that's, I think, the CAP coordinator team it's just an ongoing process trying to get those changes, whether it's permitting changes or the notion of sandboxing is there, but those different things, it's not going to be an overnight approval, and it's a constant conversation to get us to that point down the road.
Yeah.
I would like to I'm picturing Jill on our podcast recently, and I do want to give a shout out because they really have shifted to people, projects, and progress as things that they're focused on. And that shows up in a couple different ways, but the consistent support for a CAP coordinator team, like funding dedicated for it, is a piece that makes a lot of this even possible, even something to consider. And so that looks really different in every county, but in Lancaster, that has made it's been a huge part of why we've been successful.
Yes.
So thank you for being part of our CAP coordinator team and the lead for a big chunk of that all along the way.
No worries.
Can you give some examples of successful projects over the past year?
I believe it's everything that went in, but it's also simultaneously, why I say everything that went in, and my comparable isn't last year or 2022 or 2021. I look at it again. Remember, when we talk about improvements or focusing on that ecological consideration, these are 20, 50, 100-year efforts.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the amount of projects that went in last year compared to, say, 2015, and then 2000, and then 1985, and then even the 1950s. What has happened over that time? And I think the fact that we have these types of projects and these number of projects actually going into the ground relative to, say, when I look back at 1960, that is just, to me, an absolute success. That within, what is it now, 60 years, this complete paradigm shift to me is it's representative. All those projects are just part of that story of that full paradigm shift over that time frame.
Yeah. In thinking about time, there are a lot of BMPs that are going to require maintenance and upkeep. Is there anything in the plans for that part of it?
Yes and no. We know it needs addressed. We know it needs to happen. But we do have, I'll say, resource limitations to maybe fully realizing that. But I believe most understand it's necessary, because we have gone through a portion of this paradigm when we look at facilities. So we want to correct that, and hopefully I think even the state is going to, the PCSM, Post-Construction Stormwater Management Manual. Yeah. There's going to be a change in reference to, it's a stormwater facility. We know it's necessary, and you have buy-in or more recognition from a lot of folks, but there's resource limitations. Even a lot of the current funding streams don't allow, say, maintenance. So times maybe we'll try and get creative in what we might call it, ongoing implementation maybe is some of that effect to we know it needs to happen, because there's a lot of facilities that were implemented in the 80s, 90s. They were built, and I can't tell you how I've found a lot that just were never maintained. There was one, I believe, in Lidditz. In downtown Lidditz, we found this detention basin that's completely overgrown. Nobody knew it was there. It was just, everybody forgot about it from 30 years ago. And it was, holy mackerel, we've got a detention basin here, and we got it all cleaned out and operational again. But it's understood there was a lot of facilities where that was a resulting condition. We forgot about the maintenance. So it's a lesson learned. And I think a lot of people recognize, we need to continue this maintenance.
Yeah. Success of those. Now I don't even know what to call them.
Facilities. Yes.
Projects, facilities. Yeah. It requires more than just the initial cost, I suppose.
Like a riparian buffer. That's a facility. The practice is that you're creating a condition to handle runoff or stabilize a street. That's the best management practice. And in that practice, there could be 12 different types of facilities to do that. You have the floodplain restoration, standard stream restoration, just riparian buffer, structures, deflectors, devices. There's so many different ways you can achieve that practice with a number of different facilities, but I'm just a stickler with definitions at times. It's always, but when I came back from California, it always threw me off when everybody was saying, we're putting a BMP in. And I'm like, really, what? And it'd say detention basin. And I'm like, oh, that's what? That's not a practice. But.
What was the thing in the BMP analytics document that you said you were such a stickler for the difference between accuracy and
precision?
Precision.
Yes. Yeah, we were trying to, that was as part of that metric story, is we were trying to improve both accuracy and precision, where we were treating them separately but congruently together.
Yeah.
So that, and we defined the accuracy as the actual number of BMPs in the ground or could be in the ground, and precision was essentially what is the framework it can operate in. So when I talked about the riparian buffers, we had aspirational numbers, and the precision was saying, well, no, your maximum limit is probably this amount.
Right.
And so that was trying to help the two numbers align.
Ken's marketing and communications brain is like on overdrive right now. How do I explain this? It makes so much sense.
I just pulled that out of a hat. So I don't know.
thank you for the content you have provided.
And that's how we came up with the metrics too. I just took a bingo wheel, and just pulled out numbers. No.
Yes. So what are the things that we need to prioritize for 2025? Like as the CAP coordinator, the projects themselves, like the implementation money is one thing, but capacity building, leadership provided. What is the CAP coordinator's biggest priority, you think, in 25?
I believe it's going to end up being, and we don't have a clear picture or maybe the details yet, but we know it's coming related to beyond 2025.
Okay.
And the next MS4 permit. And then whatever the farm bill looks like. Is these three components amongst maybe several others. I don't want to say it's a rewrite of the CAP of our goals, but it's going to be necessary, whether we call it tweaking or reprioritization or whatever it is, there's going to be this adjustment in 2025 to sort of mirror those higher goals or objectives from the Fed and state level and the Bay program that we need to make sure we align with. So it's not so much recreating what we do. It's back to that CAP coordinator team, that translator. It's aligning maybe those change in goals and objectives with what we're already doing. We don't want to upset the apple cart of what we're doing locally. We're just going to have to find a way to better align it or translate.
Yeah.
I love that because there's going to be different legislation that shows up. There's a whole new administration. So there's going to be changes. So being aware of it, knowing where to align, where to translate, and the right audiences for that. You're right. The CAP coordinator is the team to be kind of scanning things more often and then bringing the right pieces down to the grassroots level or the grass tops level. And where does that show up then?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work being done. There's a lot of BMPs being implemented. How can our listeners get involved or actively participate in helping to achieve those CAP goals?
That's a tougher question to answer than I think it's awareness.
Yeah.
That's still a challenge, is building awareness. It's very easy in our environment, in our culture, to be lost in either that economic engine or that community engine.
Right.
To sacrifice one for the other. And it leads to apathy. And that's just an ongoing challenge. And just being, if there's anything I could say, it's just awareness of how those elements intertwine and what we're trying to do to make sure they balance that economic, that community, that ecological, that's a constant effort to make sure we balance those. And just being aware of that effort, I think, is more important than anything else. And why I say that is lessons learned. It's great. We went all in on recycling, but now we've run into, we went in a way that it's, we're building like a trash mound of recyclables now, because we went in and and I think a lesson learned is if we would have stuck with awareness about use, I believe that could have created a much better long-term outcome than just, creating the bins and just still getting whatever you want and doing it. And it's just being aware that we do have ecological challenges, but we're not trying to let that dictate economic and community. We're trying to balance the three. Does that make sense?
Love it. Yep.
Yeah. That is not the answer I thought you were going to give.
What'd you think I was going to give?
My brain immediately goes to volunteering. Help to make this stuff happen. But your answer was very insightful.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
I like that.
And I think it speaks to why this resonates, the CAP idea or a collaborative approach resonates in Lancaster, because things like Water Week, things like the watershed associations, there are ways that people can find out about more or at least be aware. You're right. The theory of education is that will lead to action.
Yes.
We have to provide some of those on-ramps, but you're right. If people aren't aware of it, they're not going to care, and then they're not going to take action. So we need to put it in front of people more often.
And people react to incentives more.
Sure.
And unfortunately, incentives in the ecological realm are a lot tougher than, say, the economic realm.
Well, and we're also used to instant gratification right now.
Yes.
That's where I think of like your recycling example. We didn't focus as much on reduce and reuse. Recycling was, I can put it in the bin and I did my thing and I'm done and I can walk away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So being, aware of, okay, what does it mean to have dirty water in Lancaster? Okay, then I'll start to explore putting a rain garden in my own property.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Those were like the rain barrels. I remember
Right.
we went all in on rain barrels. I wouldn't say they're as adoptive as they've been in the past, because I think I said 15 years ago when we were talking about there was used push. I said, hey, whoever figures out how to reuse leftover rain barrels is going to make a killing down the road. We might be there, but
all of a sudden we have these newfangled sleds being used during the winter.
Right.
Trivia time.
Oh,
Yes, we have come to my favorite part of the show, and that is trivia. All right. Now, I need to tell a little backstory. We were in a meeting yesterday with you.
yes.
Ironically, a CAP coordinator
Wait,
meeting.
you were there?
I wasn't. I was hiding in the corner trying to blend in. No.
We weren't on Zoom, so you couldn't see the box around his head.
That's right.
Isn't it so different when you see some people in real life and not Zoom?
Yeah.
It is amazing.
And I noticed yesterday, the same as I did today, that you use a lot of acronyms.
Yes.
And we have done this one before. This is the return of acronym trivia. I'm going to call it Acronym Trivia 2, Acronym Strikes Back.
Oh, geez.
There we go. And the way this works, and you've actually used a few of these already, so you are going to crush this game.
I don't know.
I am just hovering my finger over the ding ding button right now. I'm going to give you the acronym. You tell me what it stands for.
Okay.
All right. TMDL.
Total maximum daily load. Thank you.
That's
Thank
a
you.
better
I'll be here all
sound
week.
than
Thank you.
CREP or CREP.
Conservation Resource Enhancement Program.
Oh, so close.
I'm going to give it to him. It's actually Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program.
Gotcha.
But you were close enough that I would take that. FSA.
Oh, geez. I don't know that one. I just know of it, but I don't know. I don't know what.
Oh my goodness! Okay,
Stumped him.
all right. It is the Farm Service Agency, which is run through the USDA.
Gotcha.
So that
Which
that having been said, what does USDA stand for?
United States Department of Agriculture.
That's correct. Back on track. Back on track. How about PACD?
Pennsylvania Association of Conservation Districts.
Absolutely. LSI.
Land Studies Incorporated.
I love the look on your face when it's like, wait a minute. GG.
Growing Greener.
Or if you're a gamer out there, it's also a good game. But yeah, Growing Greener is what I was
Or if
after.
you want to throw people off, GG Plus. Plus sign.
Right.
There you go. How about DCNR?
Department of Conservation and Natural Resources.
That is correct. K10.
Keystone 10 Million Trees.
It absolutely is, yeah. And you said this one earlier, so obviously you know it. CAST.
Chesapeake Assessment Scenario Tool.
I told you were going to crush this.
Right. You're going to be just a section of all employees orientation now.
right.
We use a lot of acronyms here. Listen to this podcast. That'll fill you in. LCWF.
LCWF?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Little Conestoga Water Federation?
Oh. Lancaster Clean Water Fund.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Throwing a curveball in there.
And then we have NBD.
NBD.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say like National Basketball Division, but I know that's not right.
It's no big deal.
Right on.
And that's it. That's our trivia.
Right on. Right on.
You did kill it. You did kill it. I threw a couple of curveballs in there for you. So
That's good trivia.
Well, that is our show. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you
for coming on here. And some great conversation. And we have a lot in common. And that made it even more fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The CAP coordinator team is pretty unique, important part of Lancaster. So thank you.
Nope,
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we will be back in just a couple of weeks. Until then, take care. Clean Water Conversations is brought to you by Lancaster Clean Water Partners. If you have comments or suggestions on the show topics, please contact us at info@lancastercleanwaterpartners.com. Thank you for listening.